This podcast is proud to be sponsored by Tuvu. Tuvu connects people, families, and communities on their values-based social media platform. There's no ads, no explicit content, just fun. Check it out at tuvu.com. With every mass shooting, the calls come out for stricter gun control laws. But do these laws actually prevent violence? Well, our guest today, a veteran police officer, says they don't. She'll explain why the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, needs to be protected and defended for the safety of moms and their families. Boy, this is going to be interesting. All coming up next.
You know, I've never really felt comfortable sharing pictures of my kids on social media. Then I found Tuvu, a premium social app with an actual, authentic community. No bots, no one trolling me or my family. Just clean, wholesome content you can trust.
Welcome to the Moms for America podcast. Each week, special guests tackle the issues facing the moms of America today. Discussions include personal stories and advice on how moms can build a strong foundation of faith, family, and freedom in their homes and country. Hi, moms. I'm Debbie Corlitis, your host, and this is the Moms for America podcast. I am so glad that you are joining us again. Each week, we gather together to inspire, encourage, and educate moms in their journey through motherhood. Well, today's show, this episode is going to be very interesting, moms, as always, right? Well, as mothers, one of our primary jobs is to keep our children safe, right? Safe from indoctrination, safe from predators, safe from bullies, and safe from violence above all. What does it mean for us as moms? I mean, do we need guns to protect our families, or do we need stricter gun control to solve moms' safety concerns? Well, our guest, Dianna Muller, is a 22-year veteran of the Tulsa, Oklahoma police force, and she believes that self-defense is a human right. She says that guns actually protect many more than they harm. Welcome, Dianna, to the podcast here at Moms for America. We're so glad to have you.
It's an honor to be here.
Well, we don't talk about this subject often, and honestly, we should be, because in today's day and age, we have the right. People are afraid of guns, but people, need to protect themselves and their families. So this is going to be a really interesting conversation because from what I understand, you were a police officer. So I always love to set this up this way because I want people to understand that the people that are coming on either have it happened to them kind of story, or they've been in the industry. They understand it from a perspective that they can talk about it very fluently, and you can. So tell us a little bit about you serving as a police officer, for over 20 years?
22 years with the Tulsa Police Department. It was a fantastic career. It went by like life does.
Yeah.
But I served in street crimes, narcotics, gangs was probably my favorite assignment. But the field is always a great place to begin and end your career.
So now, in your experience over those 20 years, obviously you dealt with crime, you dealt with all kinds of issues relating to guns, to the Second Amendment legally for people that are able to have them, and also people who were not supposed to have them, the bad guys we'll call them. What kind of things did you see on the street with gun violence, even accidental deaths? I mean, all kinds of things happen with guns. We can't pretend that doesn't happen, clearly. So I'd like to kind of see what you saw and how maybe that strengthened a perspective or changed a perspective as a police officer with guns.
Well, I would definitely say that my perspective has changed as I grew older and understood more of a individual constitutional rights and things like that. Because in the beginning, I was focused on bad guys, and that's really what I hung around and looked for bad guys and responded to calls where bad guys were. So it didn't strike me as much as it does today that,
Right.
you know what, every human being has the right to defend themselves. Now, do I want to make sure criminals are held accountable for the crimes that they do? Absolutely. But it is definitely a little bit different pause as to you're you're a criminal and you cannot do your crime. The gun is an enhanced sentencing a lot of the times, and I don't have a problem with that. If you're going to do a crime and you're going to use a gun to commit your crime, then let's throw the book at you. But if you're a felon, I have definitely changed my opinions of if you're a felon, a convicted felon, and you are out, you've done your time, you have been deemed okay to be out in public, then I don't think that you should have that fundamental right to defend yourself stripped away from you. So those things have changed for sure.
As life changes and experiences happen, you do look at things differently. And we're going to get into a lot of those things. But I do want to just touch on something that you just mentioned. You talked about the right to bear arms, the Second Amendment. Let's talk about this because some moms that might be listening or some women that are listening may think that, the Second Amendment was to hunt. For everybody to be able to do something very simplistic. But no, the Second Amendment was created to defend the First Amendment. So I'd like to talk about that because our founding fathers thought this to be extremely important and that the right to bear arms was to be protected. So much that they put it in the Constitution. I'd like to just talk about this because this is fundamental to our country. Many countries, this doesn't happen around the world.
It really is. And that's why I think that this conversation with a bunch of moms, because moms want to protect themselves, they want to protect their children.
Right.
And I get that, but they have been really propagandized to against guns and gun ownership. So I'm really excited to be able to have a conversation that kind of gives you the flip side of why we oppose universal background checks, why we oppose red flag laws. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it is the Second Amendment really is the capstone to our entire Constitution, because without it, I mean, you're seeing it playing out in countries across the world right now, is that there is chaos. Venezuela, they can't feed themselves. They can't defend themselves against a tyrannical government. And it looks like maybe they have come out of this. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But we're right in the midst of that. We're in the midst of a lot of violence in Europe, in London, and mobs of people. I was going to post a video today about, the guy that's getting basically just beat up for no reason at all. And say, if anybody ever asks why you need an AR-15, there's 150 people around you. And you don't have a chance with anything, and the firearm really does level the playing field. Now, it's just the ultimate equalizer.
Yeah, it is, because I understand your point. And by the way, I've gone through my conceal and carry class. My husband has been very committed to our family being able to protect themselves legally. And, so that is the right that we have here in America. We can own a gun. We should be practiced. We should be versed. We should be comfortable. But it would be in case of an absolute emergency where you feel your life is in danger. And we are now in a culture where often I do feel like my life could possibly be in danger. And so many things have happened over the last few years, and our borders are open. We don't know who is coming. There's all kinds of incredible fear throughout the country. And so, I guess we have to just talk about this, and we can't be afraid to discuss our Second Amendment. But we also want to have a civil America. This isn't the wild, wild west. So how do we balance this? That's really the springboard that I want to start this conversation with. How do we keep the hands, guns out of the hands of criminals and allow law-abiding citizens to own guns? They go through those classes, they apply for that, whatever that is that we need to do to make sure that we understand and are legal. But how do we balance this? I mean, stricter laws? No, the criminals don't abide by the laws.
That's a great question. That is a great question. And let's look at the cities that have the strictest gun control.
Yeah, I'm out of Chicago, by the way.
Have the most violent crime. It is rampant. People don't feel safe.
No.
So obviously these laws are not only ineffective, but they're dangerous, because I can tell you the statistic that 94, I think it's 94 or 96% of all mass public shootings happen in gun-free zones. So
Say
these
that again. I want everybody to understand that stat.
96% of all mass public shootings occur in gun-free zones.
Yeah.
So
Of course they do.
gun-free zones are very, very dangerous. So how do you balance that? Okay, I would just say, I would step back and say common sense to me, because we hear a lot about common sense and how, common sense gun control. Well, common sense to me is that the cities that are having the most violence and plagued with crime, they should adopt the rules and the laws of the cities that don't. And that's where you're seeing less gun control, that good people are actually allowed to protect themselves. That in itself is a deterrent. So I think that, the old saying that an armed society is a polite society, it really does apply. It's not the wild, wild west. Every time some constitutional carry state, a state flips into constitutional carry, we hear it's going to be the wild, wild west. And time again, that is not the case. So we advocate, we haven't even kind of broached the subject of Women for Gun Rights, but it's a group I founded in 2016. And, we believe that education is the key to firearms safety and violence prevention. And we want to talk about that. We want to talk about that to all the moms and help them understand that they are being targeted on an emotional scale, to give up a very valuable right that is actually one that's there to protect them.
Let's talk. Yeah, I want to just go on the heels of that, because that's really kind of my next question. I think, are moms looking at this subject more often now? Do you think that women are considering maybe taking classes? I mean, there's been classes out here where they've been booked, a women's firearm classes. I'm just curious what you're seeing across the country from women wanting to conceal and carry.
Absolutely. The women demographic is the largest growing demographic of gun owners. So over the past,
Look at that.
handful of years, we're talking about the number of women interested in protecting themselves with firearm has grown exponentially. And the biggest group of that is Black women. So people are understanding that A, the Second Amendment is for them, and B,
Not just for the bad guys.
it's
Well,
not.
there is no Second Amendment for the bad guys, I should say. We don't want any bad guys having that. But again, that's really what we have to, just what you said is it. The Second Amendment is for them. It's not for these criminals.
It's
of
for
course.
everyone, because I have one specific girl that's in my head that, she tells me her story. She's a Black female, and she said growing up, she did not think that that she could have a gun.
Wow.
And it took a Black female police officer during a road rage incident to explain to her, yes, you can. And that kind of began her journey of freedom, of liberty, of being able to defend herself. It was a completely new chapter of her life. So the Second Amendment should be the glue that holds us all together. And it's become such a divisive topic.
Right.
It should not be a partisan issue. It should be a constitutional issue that we can all respect. But again, I believe that there are forces at work to disarm America for sinister reasons. And they really do prey upon women. There's a group called Moms Demand Action. It's a Bloomberg funded $60-ish million a year group organizing and using the female voice to call for more gun control, demand more gun control. And they have really been unfettered for the 10 or 12 years that they have been around. So that's why I believe that Women for Gun Rights is such a valuable group, is to say, hey, wait a minute, we are moms, we are daughters, we are victims, we are survivors. We understand that this is a constitutional issue, and that this your policies are not necessarily making me any safer. They're actually making my world more dangerous.
Correct. You talk a lot, and this is kind of what you are talking about, but really we have to be our own first responder. Because what is it? I don't know. It could be anywhere in your neighborhood, moms, as you're listening. It could take anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes for a police officer to come. Um,
I have a lot of
who
experience
knows?
with that.
Right. Yeah. So tell us about that, because you are your first responder. If somebody's coming in after your child, you cannot wait for the police. You call the police, but you can't wait for them.
Right.
Right.
Uh, After 22 years of answering calls of service and trying to get there as fast as I possibly could, and being a police officer, and sometimes I was my own first responder, sometimes I was the only responder, and I'm waiting for the cavalry to get there too. So I
Right.
understand how it feels to be vulnerable and waiting for help to come. But I also understand that I can't be, there's a saying that says I carry a gun because I can't carry a cop. And
Mm,
so
wow.
that is so true, that
Yeah.
you are your own first responder. And there's a lot of people who live, people want to talk about privilege. If you don't think that you need a firearm, if you don't think that your world, that evil can penetrate your world, that is living at such a privileged life, that I hope that they recognize it, and that not everybody can attain, the means to live in that kind of neighborhood or have their own security or hire somebody that has a
Right.
gun to follow them around.
Right. So we have the aspect of us going into the world with our children, walking through maybe dark lit parking lots, maybe being held up at there's carjackings where I mean, there's so many crazy things going on all across the country where you just don't know if you feel safe. But even home invasions. I have a friend of a friend who answered a door to someone and they busted down the door and almost killed her. I mean, these things are happening and it's not just happening in maybe low income or crime infested areas. This is happening in communities all across the country. Home invasions, attacks at
I agree.
stoplights.
I think that that is another liberal policies that, aren't holding criminals accountable. We can look at city after city after city and DAs that have weak policies when it comes to prosecuting
Yes.
people and letting people out early. It's almost like they want the chaos. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And I do not understand why people support that.
Yeah,
Uh, so,
I
yeah,
agree. And they are defunding the police all across the country and these democratic states. We did a safety act here in Illinois, which was just a horrendous piece of legislation that basically, soft on crime
right.
and took away a lot of the issues or a lot of liberties that police officers had. Should everything always be evaluated and better? Of course. But when you start defunding the police, less police, and giving police less authority to protect and defend, then you're just, so less police, stricter gun laws, and more crime. Okay, that just does not sound like a very good setup to me, Diana.
It's common sense. There is definitely that defund the police and undermining the authority or undermining the legitimacy of the police department. And listen, I was a
Mm,
policeman. I feel like I came from a great police department, and but honestly, as a civilian and even as a retired police officer, I would not go into New York and Connecticut and those places that have been so bombarded with the mentality that citizens shouldn't be armed, that because I would be scared of policemen to not use common sense and say, oh, she's even a retired police officer, let alone a civilian with a firearm. So there's definitely a line that I don't want to give full authority and bow down to the police state, because I can see it eventually getting to a place where they're going to come after me. They're going to come after the hate speech. You see that in England right now, that people are being arrested for what they say online. So
yeah,
it's definitely unusual times that we live
it
in.
is.
The one of the other things I want to mention too, you brought up accidents and
Hmm.
accidental deaths, and there's a number that you will hear from the anti-gun, pro-gun control people of 40 to 45,000 people annually are lost to firearms, and they call it gun violence.
Okay.
Well, my gun isn't violent. It's it doesn't make any sense to call, a fork an assault fork if I stab you with a fork. It's just that 45,000 number
Yeah.
should be compared to the number of saves. If we're going to look at what a firearm has done and can do, and
Mhm.
the CDC actually did a study in 2013 that said there were up to 200,000 to 2 million saves
Mm.
annually. Now that has been scrubbed from their website.
I was about to say the CDC report. We
It was an Obama administration study, and they didn't like the results of it, so
Yeah.
they buried it. And that is exactly what the emails that was pleading with them to take it off their website. Somebody said, you have to bury that. And not only bury it, you dig
Mm.
it up, you kill it again, and you bury it again. So those are the kind of shenanigans that we're up against, is that, that's the propagandized stuff that we're talking about, is that there is definitely a concerted effort to guns and gun ownership bad.
And
Uh,
I think the media does bury those stories as well, that if someone did defend themselves and save their child from being raped or themselves or any kind of assault on their family and they protected themselves and they took care of the bad person. I think they bury those stories because they don't want people to understand what a powerful option they have to protect them and themselves. But I think as moms, again, we're just talking to a wide variety of moms here on the podcast, and women. They're afraid that maybe if you get a gun in your home, how do you handle that with your children? How do you make sure there are no home casualties? And we know that, guns can be dangerous in a home if they're not handled properly. It's a valid concern.
Well, it is a valid concern, and it's a very easy for me to, I mean, we teach our kids all the time. We teach them about hot stoves, we teach them about sharp knives, and we should teach them about firearms from a very young age. And, you can start by giving them, a cutout of a gun, and teaching them the 4 fundamentals of safety.
Mm,
It's all about education. Let's teach them how to be safe with this tool. It is
yeah,
nothing more than a tool. If we're going to at some point let, your teenager cut down a tree with a chainsaw, we're very, very conscientious of, safety, and making sure you have glasses and earmuffs, and making sure you understand that the chain can come back and cut your leg off. There are dangerous tools in the world, but they're
right.
tools nonetheless, and they can be used for good and they can be used for evil.
Sure. And I think too, if any of us know that maybe a child could be suffering from depression or someone in the home, you take all of those precautions, and that's your responsibility as a gun owner.
Absolutely.
So, we all can figure this out in our homes. I know moms know their homes the best. So, let's talk about your organization too. So now we'll get into this because we kind of want to talk about the situation, at hand, and then move towards some of the answers or what your organization is suggesting, providing, and investigating, I guess, on many levels too. So it's Women for Gun Rights. Tell me again, why did you start this organization?
Well, it was actually something that God put on my heart, because I had absolutely no intention of starting an organization. And when I first started, a friend of mine, I was just a tourist in Washington, D.C., and a friend of mine said, "Do you want to meet your legislator?" And I was completely apathetic. Probably about, 75-80% of America felt like I didn't really pay attention to politics.
Right.
But I took the meeting, and it was literally during that meeting, I was like, "Hey, is there something that I should be doing as a professional shooter?" I retired early to shoot for a living. So I shoot rifles, pistols, and shotguns. It's called 3-gun. So I'm traveling the country, I'm shooting, I'm competing, and I go to Washington, D.C. So that's kind of where the lightning struck. And I said, "Hey, there's something that I should be doing as a professional shooter to help educate the people in this building that are making some really misinformed
Mm.
decisions that affect me, in fact, all of America." And it was from there I realized that, can you even go in and talk to your legislator?
Right.
I had no clue. So yes, the answer is yes, you can. You can make an appointment, you can walk in, and you can either talk to their staffers or the legislator, the member, if they're there. But I realized I'm from Oklahoma. I can only talk to my Oklahoma folks. So then I started reaching out to friends, and I was like, hey, girls, let's go to Washington, D.C., and trying to pick one from every state. And that's how it started. We went
Look at that.
annually to Washington, D.C., and just had conversations with people as gun owners and telling our stories. So that's how it started. 2019, we saw Virginia, the state of Virginia, fell to kind of an all anti-2A government from the governor on down. And I said, oh boy, the fight is in the states. So I asked those women who had been coming to Washington, D.C. with me annually to go back to their states and do a similar effort at their state capitals and try to make relationships with people and talk to people who may or may not understand why we want to protect the Second Amendment.
So now, once you get there, you've got your organization all set up. You felt like there was really some different positions that your group should make or educate on or address. Let's talk about those, because universal background checks, why don't you support them? Because this is something, there's a couple of things that you really want to talk about, and I'd love to know why and what you discovered on this.
Exactly. I love this. I love having these conversations because with just a little bit of education from our side, these are the liberties that we're talking about that keep us safe and keep America, America. So
Okay.
universal background checks, they can only be enforced with a registry. Registries from the Supreme Court have been deemed illegal. And every registry has led to confiscation. So if you step back and look at about a 30,000.
Every registration has led to confiscation.
Yes, historically.
Okay.
So the universal background check is the last hurdle that these anti-gun people need to clear in order to throw the switch at some time. If they know that Dianna has 10 guns because I registered them all, they're going to come to me and say, either give up your 10 guns or go to prison. So it's very dangerous to do universal background checks.
What is that? How does that play out per state?
Well, it would be a federally enacted issue.
So
But
states can do their own. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
Hawaii is the most restrictive, and they do have a registry. But the federal government has not been able to enforce or put in place a universal background check. And that's why we oppose that, is because it's very dangerous to the citizenry of our country.
So I want to make sure I understand and clarify that, because like here in some states, they have their own gun laws and
Correct.
they have the freedom to do that. Our legislators that we elect then vote on those bills. So like here, they've just put some different type of almost a registry basically here in Illinois, which is being fought at the Supreme Court, Illinois Supreme Court. And I think it's now going above that. But universal means that the government is deciding all of that. And then that has not passed clearly. And I can understand what your concerns are with that. But how do we do this within our states that we do not have a, gun registry versus background checks are different? That's where I'm trying to go. Can you explain, what that looks like and what you would sign on to? Because a lot of times people will say, what do you want? You wouldn't want an insane person having a gun.
Well, it all goes back to, here's my position on this, is that I can't control what insane people do. I can't control what evil people do. I can control what I can do.
Sure.
I know that me being my own first responder, whether that means being armed or having somebody, traveling in pairs, doing things that keep me safe, those are things that I can control. There is absolutely nothing that you can do to prevent somebody that's crazy or evil to come up and punch you or stab you. And removing and putting the restrictions on everyone to try to prevent those people, I think is a little bit, I don't want to call it crazy, but I just don't think it's effective. Do you know what I mean?
So what about just background checks in general? What do we have in place now, and what would your position be on that? Because I know a lot of people do want to know, I mean, what should we do about background checks on people? Should we know if they're criminals?
Well, I think that there's definitely a background check system in place right now. But again, there, it's just tough.
Yeah.
I personally think that background checks are an infringement of sorts. But I am not opposed to what they have in place today, which is the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. We do fill out a form. Now, what they want to close that loophole, that gun show loophole, which is kind of a misinformation term that they've used, is that they don't want me to be able to sell you and I know that you're not a felon and you can possess a firearm lawfully. They don't want me to be able to sell you my firearm. They want to cut that off. Once they cut that off, once they get that, that you have to go through a background check for that personal transaction, that's the universal background check. Now that also presents problems in that, what about my family? What about my friends? What about somebody came over and she got beat up by her husband and she's scared to death? Sorry, I can't help you. We're both going to go to prison. There's unintended consequences, but honestly, the background checks, they don't seem to have worked. There are states and there are entities that haven't put prohibited people into the system. The firearms industry is actually working through National Shooting Sports Foundation to make it a law that you have to report those people. I want to say it was a Sutherland Springs, Texas shooter that was a military guy that the military didn't put him into the system as a prohibited person. So there's obviously breakdown there. But the bottom line is that it's not going to keep you any safer. You are going to keep you safer. Trying to prevent somebody from doing a crime to you, whether they use a firearm or not, isn't a viable option to me based on what I've seen.
I gotcha. And I think that's really where your discussion is happening here. You're trying to educate women and folks all across the country about their opportunity to protect themselves and their family. So I understand where you're going. Real life examples of how not maybe having a gun could have saved someone's lives or some of those stories that you've heard, maybe someone breaks into their home or there's there's Nikki's story. Why don't you tell us about her story? She was stalked, right?
Yes, Nikki Gozier, was out of Tennessee and her husband had a karaoke business and they went to this restaurant bar, which was a gun-free zone. She left her lawful firearm in the car and her stalker came in. She saw him. She asked the restaurant to ask him to leave. And he ended up shooting and killing her husband 6 times, I believe. And had all sorts of things to kidnap her in the car. And it's tragic. I mean, that is the ultimate example of a gun-free zone being dangerous. She obeyed the law. She did what was supposed to keep her safe. And it ultimately ended up taking her husband and affecting her life still to this day.
Oh, horrible stories like this across the country. When we talk about gun-free zones, just like this story, but different, schools are gun-free zones. Now, do I think that children should be bringing guns to school? No. But do I think that we need to, I've heard all kinds of interesting options that schools, officials, and boards have come up with, like teachers, if they go through a certain class, they could carry to stop, or retired military, if they've got a background in military, they could carry within the school, again, to protect the children. If a criminal knew, a psycho person knew that there were armed teachers, I don't know if he would go into that school.
Well, we do know at least one of them because the girl who went into the Covenant School in Tennessee last year or 2 ago, she documented that she went to this school because it didn't have security, because
Right.
it was an easier target. So it's absolutely a deterrent. And, we don't want to come saying no, the organization of no. We have definitely solutions to things that I think everybody wants. They want safety for their kids in the home. We believe in Kids Safe Foundation as an organization that we promote for teaching firearm safety to kids. We also understand that suicide is a huge issue, and I think it's going to continue to rise just because of the godless
Yes.
country and the chaos that's coming. So suicide, of that 45,000 number annually, 2/3 of those is suicide. So
Mm.
we promote an organization called Hold My Guns, and that is a non-governmental organization that says, if you're feeling bad, suicidal, we can
Hmm.
hold your guns, no questions asked. If you're moving across the country, if you're deploying, we can hold your guns, no
Yeah.
question asked. Things like that. Now, universal background checks would affect that. And then for the school stuff, we promote Faster Saves Lives. And it is a school administration and teacher violence response. So if there were a shooting, there's a big component of it of stop the bleed. The Pulse nightclub shooting actually had me carrying a tourniquet after that, because I recognized how long it took police officers to get in
Mhm.
there and make a difference and stop what was going on. And I know a lot of people just bled out. So
Wow.
stopping the bleed and some dirt medicine there in Faster Saves Lives, coupled with firearms training and scenario-based training.
Okay,
So
well, I do want to get into all this, but we do have to take a quick break here. I want to get a little bit more specific on those programs that you just mentioned. I want to make sure that all the moms know where they can get that and so on and so forth. So hold with me for just 1 minute. And moms, before we go to the break, I do want to just invite every mom that is listening to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Wow, what great information. I also want you to, if you have any ideas, please send me an email at podcast@momsamerica.net. I do think that someone actually suggested Dianna for us through the email there. So please go ahead and email me if you have any questions about the podcast or any topics or suggestions. Again, moms, we love you. We want to invite you to be a part of Moms for America. We are moms uniting all across this country. We are fighting for faith, family, freedom, and the Constitution. How do you join Moms for America? You go to momsforamerica.us, sign up for our newsletter, and you become a part of our family. So, okay, stay with us, because when we return, Dianna will talk about, again, some of those common sense gun safety programs that she just briefly mentioned. We'll tell you how you can get all that information and maybe her views on some advice for mothers in handling this situation with gun control, Second Amendment, and the importance of protecting ourselves. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
What kind of America do you want to leave future generations? What do you want America to look like for your children and your grandchildren? Our nation is at a crossroads, and it will be us, the mothers of America, who will determine the future of our country. What we teach and nurture in the hearts of our children and how we vote will make all the difference. If you love God, respect life, honor family, and cherish freedom, then use your voice and be heard. We teach these values in our home. Let's secure them with our vote.
All right. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation about guns and protecting our children, ourselves, the future of America, the constitutional right that we have. Dianna, you talked about some of those programs. Again, just overview, highlighted those. We've got a safety training emergency response. Did you talk about that one specifically? And I want to make sure that everyone knows where they can get your information, the website, and so forth, about the programs that your team has provided for moms and for all of us, actually.
Sure. Well, our website is womenforgunrights.org. When we go and we talk to our legislators or we talk to our communities and things like that, we promote these other organizations, these non-governmental organizations. And again, for the education of the young kids, it's Kids Safe Foundation.
Hmm.
And then, and he's from Oregon. He started it from Oregon. He has such a big heart, teaching kids how to properly be around firearms. You know,
Okay.
as a young kid, we don't touch firearms, and we go tell an adult into even their first shots. So that's really important to take away the mystique away from, you know, firearms. We always play, you know, kids play with guns. I won't even get into what the gaming industry has done with guns and
Oh, can you imagine?
psyches, but we believe that educating them and teaching them that they are a tool and that they are dangerous is
Yes.
a way to keep them safe.
So important.
Then on to the suicide issue, you know, it breaks my heart. The suicide issue breaks my heart. And 2/3 of all gun violence, and air quotes, is from suicide. So I definitely think that there's, you know, a mental health aspect that we cannot ignore, and that it doesn't really make any sense to, you know, think that there's about 12,000 actual homicides annually, that are the scary ones, that, you know, somebody's either getting hit by a stray bullet or intentionally being targeted for a homicide. But the suicides are such a
Mm,
such a
heartbreaking. Yeah.
yes, so heartbreaking. And one of our state directors in Washington actually did a program through the VA, and she was awarded a $1 million grant that dealt with suicide. So we're very proud of, you know, encouraging people to have those difficult conversations. How are
Right.
you? And
Right.
are you suicidal? I
Mm.
mean, if you can get over that hurdle of saying those words to somebody, people will respond, and you might be able to save a life. But on to the kids and the schools. I definitely think that fasterSavesLives.org is a viable option. It started in Ohio. I believe it's in 13 different states right now. But that's who we introduce anybody to if it's a school district and they're looking for answers, because we do not have to live with school violence.
Mm.
Liberal policies are letting these kids get to a point where they think that they can kill their classmates. I don't know
Crazy. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Parkland shooter, but the police were called at his residence, I think it was 33 times. And nobody does anything because everybody wants to, you know, coddle.
Right.
We can't say no, we can't discipline
We
people.
can't offend anyone.
And I want to say that he was an issue at school. You know, kids saw something and said something,
Sure.
but the schools let them have like 3 strikes per year before they would even call the police. So there's a book called Why Meadow Died. Andrew Pollock lost his daughter, and he is very avid that she didn't have to die, and that these policies in these schools are what led to her murder.
Yeah.
And 20 some other kids. It's just
Sure.
absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But we don't have to live like that. I mean, legislators, celebrities, they don't live like that. They lock the doors and they have security, and they have, you know, TSA to go on an airplane. And you're telling me that we can't secure a school. And again, it's almost like they want the chaos, and it's just heartbreaking that we can't have a conversation about people who are willing and able to in the schools to carry firearms. There are people that are definitely willing and capable. Now there's the teachers and the teachers union. I understand the backlash, and everybody, when I want to talk about it, everybody wants to talk about that's not our jobs. That's not, you know, but there are some people, if you mind the right people, there are people that are capable and willing to do the job. And allowing that to happen is definitely going to make your school much safer.
Absolutely, which is, you know, it's disheartening to think that moms are sending their kids to a public school or anywhere actually now. You have to worry about a mass shooting. I mean, come on. It's terrifying. And our kids grew up, I don't remember anything ever like this when I was younger.
No.
I didn't remember any of that ever happening.
And we can't even dig into this, but all the drugs that the kids are on,
Of course.
our eyes are in my opinion, are a huge issue that we should be tackling at a national level.
Yeah.
But it's very, the world is run by pharmaceuticals, so
Mhm.
it's a very tough one to break.
Yeah, that is. It is. The culture has just has a lot of challenges when you're raising kids in this culture. Some advice to the moms that are listening, that are, maybe just kind of either maybe considering getting a firearm or just thinking about it maybe for the first time. I'd like you just to talk with them because I know your mission, your goal is to help women protect themselves and their family. And for those that are maybe just a little gun shy, for lack of a better term, right? Just a little bit. I mean, my husband's like, you gotta buckle up. You got to be ready. And I'm like, I really don't want to carry. I really don't want to do that.
It's a
It's,
huge responsibility and
yeah.
it's not easy to do. But there are things that I would speak to moms and I would say that there are things that you can do to be safer and keep your kids safer without carrying. And let's start there.
Okay.
There are trainings that you can go to. My favorite place in the world is called WOFT, WOFT, Where Our Families Train.com. It's down in Orlando and I call it Tactical Disneyland because it's more like,
Really?
yes, it's more like a resort than it is a range. But
Okay.
they practice scenario-based training and predator, how a predator behaves. And you
Hmm.
learn from what happens in the wild and what happens in humans. And it's kind of the same thing. So there are things that you can do to be safe without carrying a firearm. But if you're toying with that, just have conversations with somebody who is, legitimately open to helping you. And that might not be even your husband. That might not be even, there's organizations that are specifically designed for women. There are several shooting chapters like A Girl and a Gun. Uh,
Mhm.
that is a great organization. Armed Women of America is a great organization. And there you can kind of find a place to go shoot in a chapter that might be close to you that you can actually go and have like-minded women help you find what's best for you, because it is a long journey and it can be intimidating. So don't think that, I walk into a gun store as a professional shooter and they don't know who I am. And I
Mm.
still get the little lady, how can I, what do you think you need? Let me get you this pink, small little gun. Just say, thank you. I'll find somebody else, because there's definitely that kind of mentality anywhere. But there are people in this space that are there to help you and reach out to us, Women for Gun Rights, contact at Women for Gun Rights. Reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'd be happy to have these conversations, and I would be happy to come back and talk about
Mhm.
red flag laws, why red flag laws are dangerous and dangerous for police
Yeah,
officers.
close out with that. I'd like to hear, and I thought we touched on that and we didn't. Red
So
flag laws. Let's talk about that because we'll leave people with a thought to ponder.
right. Red flag laws. It sounds good, but they can be maliciously used. I mean, how many times have we seen domestic violence? People use lies in order to do bad things to their spouses. So it can be maliciously used with it, whether it be a spouse or a neighbor. But it's dangerous for police officers because what you're doing is you're sending a police officer to a door, somebody who may know their constitutional right, and saying, hey, hand over your firearm without any kind of due process. Very dangerous. But it's also redundant because if you're legitimately calling on somebody because you think they're a danger to themselves or others,
Okay.
then how is removing one means of danger helping them or helping the situation? Why is
Good
it just
point.
the gun? And I don't think there's any compassion in that. And every state has a 72-hour hold for people who have, you sign an affidavit and they say that the judge says that these people are going to be held for up to 72 hours and see a doctor. Every state has that already. So it's redundant.
Okay.
Red flag laws are redundant and dangerous.
Okay. Well, this is what we have. Collect all this information and think about it from different perspectives and different, there's always different ways of looking at these things. And when you hear this, it challenges us all to, one, figure out what we need to do. How do we keep ourselves and our kids and our families safe? And how do we keep America? How do we keep the future of America? Because it will definitely change if the Second Amendment is ever taken away or limited. So we have to figure it all out. Thank you for what you're doing and educating moms and women all across the country. We so appreciate that. And again, your website is, say that one more time.
Womenforgunrights.org. It is free
.org.
to join, and we need all the female voices that we can get to build an army of people to say, hey, we want to be safe, and we believe that we are safer with our firearms.
All right. Thank you, Dianna. That's a great line to end on. We appreciate you stopping by here at the Moms for America podcast, and we wish you guys all the best. We appreciate you defending our constitutional right. So thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
Boy, do we appreciate that conversation with Dianna. Thank you so much. These are things that we have to be talking about as moms. How do we protect and defend our children? Our constitutional rights are very important. So thanks, Dianna. Moms, I do want to always direct you to our website again. It's momsforamerica.us. We are moms on a mission here. We are reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution. We have incredible resources for you at momsforamerica.us. Sign up for our newsletter. Check out all of our resources. We're here to help you, moms, from public policy to Congress. We have it all at momsforamerica.us. As always, moms, you are the heartbeat of your home. We love and appreciate you. Keep doing your thing there in your home with your children. They're the most precious gift that you have, and you are their greatest influencer. So, moms, I'll see you next week, and let's keep changing our country one home at a time. Talk to you soon, and God bless.